Alright, so this is going to be the patch 7.4 rundown. We're going to talk about the patch, we're going to see how it implicates the game, and we're going to hopefully win 400 million in the Powerball XD. Alright, so this is a patch where I think a lot of couple jungle changes and at least the Shaco it affects. So Cho'gath are updated. Cho'gath no longer loses feast stacks on death. Okay, that's good for Cho'gath because he wasn't in that good of a spot anyway. Feast can now stack infinitely. Only 5 times can be gained through minions, non-epic monsters, even though they don't have to be the first 5. So that means you can get them after 5, even if your first 5 was from people or champions. Feast no longer heals Cho'gath when it heals a unit at max stacks. Okay, that was that was like a minimal situation that occurred. Feast no longer grants 2 stacks on champion kills or half mana cooldown refund on minion kills. So it's not refunded on minion kills, so that's one of the major things, because the spike from when Cho'gath gets to level 6 to how strong he is at level 8, let's say it's like a minute cooldown, I think it was like 45 or something, once it's halved. So instead of being 45 times 5, which is the 5 or 6 stack spike from Cho'gath, now there's not that, so you don't have a level 8 or level 7, level 8, level 9 Cho'gath being extremely strong. What some players would call him would be like an unmovable top lane or an unmovable mid lane, based on the fact that you would just ult the minions and then overstack that. So that kind of hurts Cho'gath, and we don't really want to be hurting Cho'gath because he's not in a great spot. Feast no longer grants 2 stacks on champion kills. So this is like a harm to Cho'gath, really. It really hurts his level 7, level 8, level 9 play after he gets his initial level 6 ult. Ability cooldown down, 10% bonus health. So are we talking about your bonus health? So is he doing 10% damage with his bonus health, or what was it before? I never really knew what it was before because no one would play Cho'gath, but what does the bonus health right now do? Oh, so he's talking about the bonus health that he gets, not any damage done or anything. So instead of having a flat amount, he's going to get 10% bonus health. So instead of getting 100 or 180, which would be 1,000 HP or 18,000 HP respectively, which is not that hard to do, he's going to get 10% bonus health. That's a lot of health. Like if you have a 4k health unit, that's 400 HP, that's a lot of health. No wait, that's this. Like this is decreasing, this is getting nerfed. This is getting nerfed. This is getting slightly buffed, but we don't really care about his range because he's already a melee champion, that doesn't matter too much. So it's all because Cho'gath getting his maximum size at 10. Cho'gath R does 10% bonus HP of target? Okay. So that's a lot of damage. So decreasing the AP ratio decreases the chance that you're going to see AP Cho'gath. Not that you should be playing AP Cho'gath in general, because that's just a burst cheese with probably Proto Belt anyway. God, I haven't seen Cho'gath in so long. So if you're going to play burst cheese, I guess this affects you a little bit, but in general you should be playing some slight tank mixture. And the fact that this goes to 10 now justifies this. So it hurts his mid game. So his mid game is hurt quite a bit from this and from not being able to get it the half cooldown refund. So his level 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe through 10. Maybe his level 6 through 10 is really gutted. But maybe his 11 plus, his level 11 plus is gets really strong, because by gutting his mid game, by not giving him the ability to get to 5 or 6 stack by reducing the cooldown or not getting 2 stacks on champions and reducing all this, guts his mid game. But clearly after stack 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it really goes to help. So the question is Cho'gath a champion that has problems in the mid game or the late game, right? And I would say that you really don't want to hurt Cho'gath's mid game, because Cho'gath already has a tough enough time mid-game, right? If Cho'gath was winning, he's obviously already going to continue winning the game, but I think that Cho'gath has a problem getting through the mid-game against the ranged champions and needs to stack up. So I think overall this is a nerf to Cho'gath, but if you're a Cho'gath player that can get through the mid-game by playing relatively safely, sort of like a Maokai playstyle, then I think it could be okay. Bard, Move speed to 24%, 14% chimes, and then max bonus 80%. I don't think this changes too much. I guess Bard wasn't getting back to lane quick enough to get the EXP that he needed. But I guess getting chimes already gives you a method of getting EXP on the map. Overall, I felt like Bard was in an okay position. I didn't think that this change was needed. This is just an R, the R flash. Missile damage down. Ratio down. This was completely warranted. Corki was just one of those oppressive champions because playing a ranged champion is almost always going to have a better laning phase than playing a melee champion. Additionally, Corki has one of the few ranged champions being played in mid at the moment. Not that there couldn't be others, right? You can definitely put MF mid, Jhin mid, even Quinn mid, right? And I think the lethality builders are infinitely better than the Triforce builders, such as Corki. So I think that this nerf is good to the overall state of Corki, but I think it needs to be alongside nerfs to other lethality champions, right? Because like when you play with Corki and you get a Sheen spike, that's great, but most Corkis aren't allowed to build Sheen first because of the toxicity or volatility of the mid lane. Because when you don't build Phage, or when you don't build the cloth armor up against the Zed, you're just gonna get wiped. So Corki really doesn't have a way to just base with 1100 gold, and just buy a Sheen and not just die to the Syndra, and not just die to the Zed or the Talon. So because of that, the lethality spikers are actually stronger than the would-be Sheen spikers. Because if Corki needs to have 2,000 or 2,300 gold to finally get his Sheen spike, well, the lethality builders only need 11, and then they can transition into survival after that. I mean, I guess it's the same story, right? Sheen and lethality cost the same. So if you put Jhin mid, or if you put Quinn mid, or if you put MF mid, they're still going to die to the same champions. So what I'm saying is that it's a nerf in the right direction, but Corki already had issues spiking, right? If Zed can spike off of the one lethality item, well, Corki has to play perma defense by building Phage, then Zed can just opt out of the lane 1v1, or even still win the lane 1v1. But Zed can sort of just opt out, or Talon can sort of just opt out and go to side waves. And Corki can't really do anything about that because the Phage isn't enough protection from the roam, or to 1v1 to stop the Talon from roaming, which is why exhaust is so big. But this, like, gutting Corki only matters if you're gutting other champions to the same level. Current call, slow duration. Okay, this is slightly warranted. This is a fix. This is a nerf to Maokai. It doesn't change too much. This is a nerf to Maokai. It doesn't change too much of what Maokai actually does, I don't think. Flux damage is going to be down. I think this was fairly warranted as an AP mage that had infinite scaling. You kind of, take that. And people in my chat are like, okay, you could take exhaust versus assassins, and that's right. But if you're only using exhausts, like, let's say you're taking exhaust versus Zed or Talon, right? You have to use it after they ult, because if you use it before they ult, then they'll just, take that trade, or they'll walk away, or like maybe you get a really good reverse trade, but they won't opt into a situation where they'll die there. They would use ult then, right? Then it's a wash, and then Zed ult and Talon ult comes up before exhaust does, and then you're done. That's how the mid lane goes. So it's effectively dead situation. The exhaust doesn't solve for the situation in the mid lane for a Corki versus Zed or Corki versus Talon. Goes play lethality down. I think this is interesting, because to bring Youmuu's lethality down, you also have to bring Edge and Duskblade down. Because how many people actually built lethality first, right? My version of Shaco, obviously, but still there are many champions that didn't go Youmuu's, right? So if you look at the state of Youmuu's, who's building Youmuu's? It's the mid laners, the top laners, some of the junglers, and most of the ADs, right? So let's address them one by one. So if you're looking at the ADs that build Youmuu's, how many of them have that big of an issue, right? Sure, Jhin has a big issue, right? So Jin's going to have the issue in the Jhin versus Sivir matchup, as we saw today at IEM. it has the issue where if you're going Youmuu's and Sivir's going Essence Reaver, then you're going to out 1v1 the Sivir, right? Because she's going for CDR while you're going for lethality, right? That's just the way it should be. So if you're looking at it in that scenario, Youmuu's is perfectly balanced in the ADC bot lane because one is opting to build it and one is not opting to build it, right? One is opting to build a later game item, just like if you were going to go Roa into a Haunted Guy's Sork builder, right? It's the same thing. You're just opting to go into a greedier build, and you should get punished for that. So it doesn't actually change the state of bot lane, right? So we're asking if it changes the state of the jungle, the mid, and the top lane, right? And what we're going to see here is that we might think Youmuu's is overtuned for the mid lane, or certain top laners such as Fiora that build it, but unlikely, mostly the mid lane. Most North American and European top lane Fiora and Camille players don't really build Youmuu's that much. It's much more likely to be seen in the Chinese servers. But top lane aside, we have to look at it in terms of the state of the jungle and the mid lane, and I'm going to talk about the mid lane last. So if we look at it in the state of jungle, right? What junglers do build it, right? We're talking about the Kha'Zix, the Rengar. We're talking about the meta picks, clearly. Obviously, Shaco builds it, but Shaco isn't a meta pick. We're talking about typically Kha'Zix and Rengar, and maybe Lee Sin. So we're asking ourselves, is Youmuu's overtuned for those champions? And you have to look at the alternative, right? You have to look at the alternative right now to this. Like, you have to look at the pre-change to the post-change, right? So is taking 5 lethality really the change that changes it for the jungle? Well, the jungle could rush Youmuu's, right? That's a fair assessment. Or it could go jungle item into Youmuu's, right? But doesn't really change the situation. No, Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, Rengar typically build Youmuu's for the move speed, so it doesn't really change the move speed initiative. The 80 is, it's staying the same, and the lethality is going down 5, right? So in the case of lethality going down 5, does that change the lethal perspective? Sure, there are marginal situations where you're not going to be able to get the kill where you could have gotten the kill before, but overall, are junglers going to stop building it because of the 5 lethality? No. So overall, it doesn't change the state of jungle builds, because if they were going to build it before, they were going to build it now, so that doesn't change. The only thing that changes is marginal situations and lethal kills, right? So do we believe that Riot is taking all the statistics of these junglers with Youmuu's and saying, okay, well, if we change the lethality from 20 to 15, then that means mid laners are going to survive 4% more of the time, top laners are going to survive 7% more of the time, and bot lane isn't going to get insta-killed when the Lee Sin goes behind the turret and goes to kill them 100-0 with their flash 100% of the time, right? Or, like, that's going to decrease 11% because we're going to decrease the amount of lethality. And it's plausible, right? It's plausible that someone at Riot is sitting there saying, okay, well, we see that bot lanes at the 10-minute mark are dying to this Lee Sin, 43% of the time. And that's, that's an arbitrary number. And if we lower lethality, which is lowering the percentage of damage by, 7% or something, then we're going to decrease the appropriate percentage down from 43% to 36%, and now Lee Sins are only going to get the bot kill 36% of the time. And there could be someone in the Riot room saying that, and that's a perfectly legitimate way of balancing. And my question to that person is, okay, so what's the marginal difference between the 43% and 63 or 36% chance of the bot lane dying? And I would say, why are you lowering that percentage play when the difference between 36% chance of bot lane dying and 43% chance of bot lane dying, like, why does that matter, right? And he says, oh, well, they might survive more. Yeah, but they're either dying or they're not dying, right? If they're still dying 36% of the time, you haven't adjusted for the problem, right? If your problem is that Lee Sin's going bot and one-shotting the 80 carry bot lane into taking the bot lane turret, then you should gut Ghostblade more, right? But the 5 lethality change, you're lowering some percentage chance that the bot lane doesn't die, but you're not solving the problem if you think that Lee Sin killing the bot lane 100-0 is a problem. It's just not enough of a change if you're going to do a change, right? So Black Cleaver gets the Kindle Gem Phage movement from the hammer, but still somehow gets its 20% CDR from the Kindle Gem plus the completion. I think this is perfectly fair. It doesn't change too much, honestly. I don't think top laners are super upset. Maybe they're upset about this 1080 change. But most people that build Cleaver outside from hyper aggro champions such as Fiora, won't mind this 1080 too much, and would rather have the health. Because if you're talking about champions like, I don't know, something like Darius, or the jungle champions like jungle Black Cleaver builders such as Rengar, potentially, right? Then this doesn't change too much. Even Kha'Zix is okay taking the 100 HP because, I mean, like, you would like the 1080 on Kha'Zix, but if you're building to kill someone, you wouldn't really build Black Cleaver anyway, so you're playing a more supportive style, so you're not too upset about the situation. Last Whisper. So this is a very interesting change I saw. Goes from pickaxe to longsword plus the total amount of gold. This is a really big transitional gut for Last Whisper, but it's not so bad considering that it doesn't cost too much, right? So if you can build a longsword, you really don't want to be holding on to this 950 gold, right? Like, imagine if you didn't have 950 gold. Imagine if you had 850 gold, right? You would have rather built a pickaxe, and then, you know, that would be the most efficient buy off, except for the elixir, right? So out of base, that would be the most efficient buy. But now you're opted out of that spot. So that's kind of bad, because LDR and Mortal Reminder weren't in that good of a spot. And Last Whisper itself, it wasn't in that good of a spot anyway. It was okay, but people didn't build it that much. Maybe as a 4th item, sometimes as a 3rd item, right? But very rarely. So I think that it's bad because it's hurting the transition phase of the item. That being said, the overall penetration increases while the ADE decreases, right? You're not really building this item for AD. If you wanted to build AD, you just build Dustblade. So this doesn't matter too much to a user. It matters, but not too much. So this is really nice. This is really nice for people who are building pen. So I think that insofar as you're not building last item as a 1st, 2nd, maybe even a 3rd item anyway, the 1300 gold isn't too hard to get in the mid and late game as it is in the early mid game, right? Because there's sideways of farm, camps give more gold, things like that. 1300 gold isn't too hard to get. So the transition, while it is bad, it's not horrible because the way that the game works in the mid-lane game, aggregation of gold and places to get gold are better as you approach 3, 4 item, 5 item spikes. And this increase makes me think that we might see LDR 3rd a lot of the time in professional games, because AD carries are going to go Youmu's into Edge, into LDR. And while they do go that already, some don't go for LDR 3rd, but this is going to be a huge swing to LDR 3rd to answer back the top lane meta. I really like this change because it gives initiative to the answering back the top lane tanks. And obviously we know that top lane tanks, they're not bad. I think top lane tanks are good. But it gives them an option, right? You don't necessarily have to do this to answer top lane tanks. You can just avoid top lane tanks, right? But I think it's a very interesting pickup for split pushers to answer tanks, such as, let's say top lane is the Maokai versus Nautilus matchup, right? But your mid lane Zed can trail and then go for this kill if he goes LDR 3rd, right? Zed can go Youmu's Edge LDR instead of Youmu's Black Cleaver Edge or something, right? So it opens up some variety options. I kind of like it. LDR is getting this health difference buff. I like that. LDR wasn't that great of an item anyway, and you know this could definitely put it off the edge. Up to 1,000 max health difference. This seems okay to me. Giant Slayer does that accordingly. Knight's Vow is an interesting item that I don't think will get picked up enough, but I hope to see it get better. So the build path goes towards Chain Vest from 2 Crystalline Braces Cloth Armor. That's a plus because supports like to have that extra inventory slot for the 3 pink word buy, which is super, super important. So I think that's a positive change. Additionally, the armor goes up by 20, bonus armor goes up by 20, tether range goes up by 1,000. So this is a really nice buff, getting the extra 20 armor in there. And but people don't go Knight's Vow for the same reason that they don't go Bond of Stone, is because the shielding from other items would just generally be better as an overall vast majority, right? Because if you're going Colossus, you soak so much more than if your AD carry gets hit. Because if your AD carry is getting hit and you take 5% of the damage or even 10% of the damage away, oftentimes the only people that can hit the AD carry are a tank that latched onto them, in which case the 5% decrease isn't that going to matter too much because they're already latched on and they're just going to be doing continual damage. Or it's an assassin, and assassins typically overcap damage. You know, they'll do like 110% of the AD carry's HP or the mid laner's HP, or 120%. So it's fairly unlikely that AD carries survive if they get hit at all. Maybe this matters more in a poke setting, but in a poke setting you don't worry about it that much, right? Because you're like, oh, they have poke, my AD carry is not going to die. So I don't really see a situation where Bond and Knight's Vow is arguably better than Colossus or just, I don't know, Locket, for example, right? Because getting in there and taking the damage, you taking the damage when your AD carry shouldn't be taking the damage in the first place is a more reasonable way to play it. I like how they're trying to up it, but I don't think it's going to get played. Fervor stacks, duration 8, so this helps Fiora get back into meta. This helps certain AD carries, maybe the attack speed oriented AD carries, Sivir, etc. get back in a little bit. Warlord's Bloodlust decreases. This doesn't matter too much because most lethality champions such as Varus, Jhin, MF were already taking Deathfire Touch, so they didn't nerf Deathfire Touch, instead they nerfed Warlords. So they're basically saying to the Sivers, the Caitlyn's, you should be taking Fervor to beat them because we're going to nerf Warlords. I mean, not that Warlords is bad, maybe they needed an overhaul on Warlords because it was too strong in general, but Caitlyn and Sivir already have an issue against them anyway. So I found these sort of interesting. The double-edged sword decreases from 3 to 15. Basically, this goes down and the battle trance damage goes down. I think battle trance is aided a lot by this. But first, let's look at the ideology behind this. Let's decrease the total amount of damage and the snowball ability from the early game, right? Let's decrease the amount that mid-jungle or typically jungle can snowball because no one really takes double-edged sword if you're a laner. So let's decrease the amount that junglers can snowball. Let's decrease the amount that AD carries can snowball. Typically AD carries take this, sometimes top laners take this. So let's decrease snowball ability, and obviously this is decreasing snowball ability. And I like that direction. Decreasing snowball ability is important because too often a Corki will just run over the game, or a Talon will just run over the game if they're taking double-edged sword or bounty hunter. A Jhin will run over the game, or Varus will run over the game. So I like this approach to semi-balance. I don't think it's the overhaul that it needs. I think that if you're not going to address lethality and change all these things, you're going to be changing a lot of other champions that don't go lethality but do run these masteries. They're going to get hurt a lot. Cutting, let's decrease, decreasing damage. Decreasing missing mana. I think this is not too impactful. This is semi-impactful. Obviously, early game nerfs to lethality change to 6.6 from 8.5, 8.4. Overall decrease in damage. I'm going to be missing a lot of damage in my build. So, the solo queue mindset for lethal and even the competitive mindset for the lethal, right, like, is getting gutted quite a bit. So let's say I'm like, I'm on comms with my top lane and be like, okay, I think we have lethal at 80%, right? So if you lower him to 80% health and the wave is in this position, I can come for lethal because he's dead, right? And then, whereas I would have lethal before because of the ferocity and cutting, this damage change, this damage change, this damage change, this damage change, mostly on Thunderlord's junglers, right? I'm not going to have that lethal as much, right? Because of this lethality, I'm not going to have that lethal in the bot lane lethal as much, or the jungle that rushes Yomu's lethal as much, right? Because of because of those changes primarily, I'm not going to have lethal as often as I did. So whereas I could probably 80 to 0, now not only am I not going to be able to 80 0, I'm going to go in at 80% and not going to be able to kill him and be like, I don't have as much damage as I thought I did. And maybe I need 75 to 0, maybe I need 70 to 0. Okay, thank you. And then let's talk about battle trance. So battle trance goes down. I think this is really, really imperative to take on the tank junglers, sort of, because the bonus is going to ramp up over 3 seconds. So This is almost as good as double-edged sword. You just have to wait 3 seconds, and 5 seconds was a lot of time before, but now when Rek'Sai does the first auto, it's just 2 seconds off and you're going to be doing the same damage, right? Battle Trance just gets infinitely stronger because this decreased. Even Kha'Zix, who jumps behind and W's, just has to wait a couple of seconds now, and then he'll have the same damage as double-edged sword. I actually think Battle Trance is gonna be the best one, even if it wasn't before, if it wasn't solidified before. You're gonna take it on almost every top 80 support if you're playing that type of support and jungler, aside from the assassins, of course, who are gonna take double-edged sword for the burst. But even the assassins that don't insta burst could end up taking Battle Trance. So stealth trap interaction. The hitbox collision increases for Teemo are they're already kind of annoying, but perfect. I mean, Teemo players will appreciate this. Teemo's still not competitive, but pretty good in solo queue if you know how to operate a Teemo. Jin's E, this was already really annoying. I don't think you needed this. Bushwhack, I don't think you needed this. You weren't. I mean, you know, it was kind of hard to get hit, so it was okay. I don't think you needed this in general. So, but you know, as a Shaco player, it's nice to have. And this is a change that, you know, a lot of people are talking about. So Jack in the Box now triggers when they're revealed by sweeping lens or control word. So obviously people aren't really going to buy control word and just put it over to just screw up your camp level 1. It's fairly unlikely. But you can get swept over the wall level 1 and you can get pretty cheese. Now the thing about it is if you get swept over the wall, right, at let's say 137 if you're doing Raptors Wolves or 140, you have to think about how this looks, right? You have to say, okay, well, if it's the enemy jungler sweeping me over the wall to proc my boxes at 139 or 136, then, and even then, it has to trigger, right? So they have to do it at least 5 seconds before the camp spawns to get efficiency out of it. So let's say this camp spawns at 140, they have to sweep at like 134, right? So, number one, you know this, right? You know going into the game this is a play. So it makes box defense more imperative than it was before, right? If before you almost auto-lost because you get invaded because your team isn't protecting your boxes, you're going to lose that situation anyway, right? So it makes the situation more imperative, which is bad for solo queue Shaco, good for quote-unquote competitive Shaco, and better for coordinated teams that will defend the Shaco box. Or if you guys opt into a composition that can't defend your own jungler, you're already screwed anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But you have to think about who is going to sweep you, right? So if you're starting on top side of the map, and I'm going to say that the safe play is going to be to start on top side of the map a lot more often, then let's say you're starting top side map on blue side, right? So you're doing blue buff. Well, if the enemy jungler comes to sweep you, they're not doing their camp, so that's bad, right? And what enemy jungler is as good at soloing a camp as you are? Not many, right? So the enemy jungler doing their topside red buff is going to need a leash a lot of the time, typically from their top laner, right? So if their mid, or if their jungler and their top are leashing their red buff, then that means they can't be the ones sweeping you, right? That means bot lane, obviously. So that means mid lane is the one that's going to sweep your buff, right? It's going to sweep to proc your boxes. So I think it's pretty easy to read who's going to buy the sweeper. The same situation happens if you're on the red side, right? Typically they're going to leash blue. Obviously they could not leash, right? But do you think that the top laner is going to not leash a lot of the time? Could be the case, right? But more than likely it's going to be the mid laner that buys the sweeper. And I'm going to talk about something else that's going to happen. So it's a little different on bot side, right? Bot side is a little harder to get into because the mid laner sort of watches the ramp and bot lane drivers just typically watched by your team. But it's a little easier. It's a little easier to sweep over the wall for blue buff than it is the red buff. So I could see a lot of bot laners, maybe supports, taking the red smite early to try and screw with you a little bit and then go to lane if you're starting on that side, which is why I'm saying top lane is a lot easier or a lot safer to not get your boxes propped by sweeping. But I want to talk about something that's probably going to end up developing. It's that if you are a top laner or a jungler that doesn't need warding totem, you could very well start sweeper, sell it, and then base, and then go buy your warding trinket, right? So, for example, if I'm the top lane Maokai, right, I could go, maybe not Maokai. I could walk over and put stand by in river or behind my red, protect my raptors, put 3 saplings down at the raptors, or put 2 saplings, walk over, sweep, walk back, put the last sapling base, and then walk to base, walk to top, right? Or maybe 2 saplings. That could be the case, right? And then I could sell my sweeper and I could buy the warding totem, right? So there's a trade-off of taking a 50-50 and proccing the boxes, because we don't know what side Shaco's starting yet, right? So there's a 50-50 that the Maokai might want to do there, but he'll be sacrificing the lane position and having his ward, right? So for those of you that thought, oh, if they just, if they just buy sweeping first and then sell it, then it'll be okay. 1 second. Hey, Mama, while we call them back in front of them, okay? We'll get them into muzzle. So that's going to be like a very odd situation that's not going to occur. So the only way in which the sweeping lens actually goes off on your bluffs is number 1, it's a blind sweep, right? And enemy junglers and enemy laners can 50-50 with blind sweep, right? Because if they don't have a ward on you or have an indication of where you're going to start, right? They can assume where you're going to start, and then they can sweep there, but they don't necessarily know 100% of the time. In fact, if they're assuming where you're going to start and sweeping, that's pretty good of them. Then they can just read you, right? They can read you start, sweep, and then go back to doing their own camp. They can sweep you out 120, and then you're screwed a little bit, right? But that's not going to happen a lot of time because they're not going to take a 50-50. So what they're going to do typically is they're going to walk into your jungle, either to drop a ward or to see you, right? But if they're walking into the jungle to drop a ward, then they don't have a sweeper. So the scenarios are, 1, they do a blind sweep. They can guess 50-50 on what camp you're starting. Maybe, 25% because you could start wolves or raptors. They can take a 25% there. They can say, come with me, teammate. You ward it, I'll sweep it, right? And then that could be their mid-top laner doing that, warding it. The top laner could, try and get the ward in, and then they could sweep it. That's what's most likely the scenario to occur. But that requires communication between the laner and the jungler. And if the jungler is the one thinking that, then they have to take the red smite or the red sweeper, which is disadvantageous towards safety. And if the top lane is the one thinking it, or the support's the one thinking it, then they're opting out of safety for that play too. It's it's plausible to happen, but more likely than not, I don't think this will happen in the majority of games unless it catches on really quickly. For a Shaco in particular, I think that it's going to take a little bit of collaboration at first for the laners and the jungler to go in for this play. And if they were going to go into proc it anyway, why wouldn't they just walk forward and stand on them, So I would recommend, as a general rule, you can start topside if you're scared, but I don't like that thought because then you're just routing based on what they could do. And in general, try to start raptors or wolves, because when you put your boxes on raptors or wolves, you're going to opt into a lot more situations that are safe for you because they're not going to sweep those a lot of the time. Additionally, you can put your boxes out of the overwall sweep range, right? If you put like 4 boxes outside of the red pit, then you can definitely, they won't get procced. You have to leash it out. It'll take a little bit longer, but it's a lot safer. So those are just some things to think about. Dustblade disables, yeah, yada yada. Scribe looms now tag wards, catch of experience. This was really interesting. So earning a killer assist while below your team's average XP now grants bonus EXP. Teamwork's bonus experience kicks in at just over 1 full level behind your team's average. Bonus scaling slightly more aggressive at first, capping at 60% for 4 level difference. So I think this has some interesting strategic value in that lane swaps and support roams. So we've seen some lane swaps in LPL from IG specifically, and when you do a lane swap where your top lane is denied EXP because maybe they sit at level 2 for a long time, or maybe they're like assisting the jungler or something, they're going to get denied EXP, and you can be level 1 or level 2 when your team is like level 5, right? So that's going to have big impacts for the competitive scene, not so much the solo queue scene. The solo queue scene, it pretty much just adapts for situations such as AFKs and whatnot. So, or one lane feeding really hard. So I think that this has a lot of competitive usage, right? Because if one team is being efficient by not giving their top lane resources so that they can get a boost in resources later, you're going to get more net benefit from that than everyone being equal, right? You're not getting the 60% extra or 40% or 45% or whatever it is, right? So that's going to be really, really interesting to see if competitive teams can find anything to do with that. Bonus XP for kills and XP higher on higher levels have been slightly increased. Sure. Getting to late game a little bit faster. Turret gold, local bonus increases. So you get the gold, your teammates get nothing in the global bonus besides the 100. If the total bonus goes down, it doesn't change too much. Maybe there are some teams that could have snowballed. In solo queue, it doesn't matter too much. And practice tool, noble fixes, and bug fixes. And that's it. And Festival of Nivea. Alright, so that's gonna be the patch 7.4 review, sort of. I talked about a couple things. I talked about everything, of course. And hopefully you liked it.